good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to Sheila Speaks, a podcast designed to educate, empower, uplift, and inspire you. Oh my gosh, do we have a guest today? Today's guest is attorney Brandon Williams. Let me tell you who attorney Brandon Williams is. Brandon Williams is the General Counsel and Chief Operating Officer of World Group Incorporated. World Group Incorporated is the parent holding company of Steve Harvey's business and entertainment empire. Yes, Steve Harvey's business and entertainment, I did say empire. Prior to attorney Brandon Williams joining Steve Harvey's business and entertainment empire, Brandon was a corporate lawyer and partner at one of the largest law firms in the world, Alston Byrd, LLP. Brandon is from Atlanta, Georgia. He attended Morehouse College, was a mathematics major, graduated in 1999, and attended Emory Law School, Juris Doctor degree, the highest law degree in the United States of America. Welcome, attorney Brandon Williams.
Welcome. Thank you, Sheila, for the kind introduction, and happy to be here. And hello to all the people that are taking the time out to listen today.
Great. Thank you, Brandon. Well, Brandon, let's just jump right in. You're born and raised here in Atlanta. So I'd like you to take a few minutes to talk about, being born and raised here in Atlanta and attending Morehouse College, the college of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., President Emeritus Dr. Benjamin Elijah Mays, Maynard Jackson, and actually my father, Julius James Sr. So
Absolutely.
Tell us a little bit about your upbringing and attending Morehouse College.
Sure. I was actually born in Michigan,
Wow.
but I've been in Atlanta since I was 5 years old. And so this is, for all intents and purposes, my birth home and, where I've grown up. And I've been in Atlanta from the age of 5 until I was like 40. And then I left to commute to Los Angeles for a job. But the biggest takeaway is that this has been my home and still is my home for the last 38 years.
Wow.
Atlanta has a special place in my heart personally because, I've always known it to be a place where that there are upwardly mobile Black folks that they are, it wasn't abnormal to see people successful in Atlanta that looked like me. And it made it much easier from an example standpoint that, people with degrees here, people that had advanced degrees, and they just had wonderful jobs and careers and everything. So, I've got friends who ultimately came to Morehouse from different parts of the country and different parts of the world. And they were somewhat shocked, right? Like they've never been in a place like Atlanta, and they've never seen neighborhoods where they're just African-American people that isn't the ghetto or isn't, some borough that is, not successful. But that's all I grew up knowing. I come from a wonderful family. My parents are both professionals. My father is a dentist and still is a working dentist and has been since we moved here. He went to Howard University, and he then went to Michigan Dental School. My mother is a Spelman graduate, and she then went to Emory Law School as well. She took some time off to work and teach and to take care of the children. I've got an older sibling and I've got a younger brother. And so for us, school and professionalism and all that was just part of the core.
Yeah.
It's who you were. It wasn't if my parents were trying to instill or say, you've got to do this, you've got to do that. It's just the way that they lived. I saw them work really hard. One of the probably more, I would say, lasting images that I can think of is that, my mother went to law school when she was 33, which would have made me probably, 7 or 8 years old.
Yeah.
And, you're at that point, you kind of know what, your parents do and how it impacts your life. And you're not like 2 years old or, things you can't
Yeah.
remember. You actually see them, doing what they do. And so I have a very vivid memory of her, amount of time she studied, the amount of how hard she was working in addition to being a parent. But just, never complaining, at least not to us. It didn't seem to me. And she always had kind of joy in her heart about it. But she was always wanting, more, wanting to be extremely successful in her own right. So that was my upbringing. My grandparents were, teachers, educators. So education has always been, very, very much at the forefront, and, hard work ethic has always been at the forefront. So what I tell people all the time, I mean, obviously, you still got to put in the time, put in the work, but I was born, on first base. I mean,
Yes, you
I don't mean that in any there. I've got friends that weren't, and
Yeah.
I've got people that are, wildly successful that came from very, very different backgrounds than me. And so when I look at my life, I almost think I'm where I should be. I think you can always think of God. That answer to that is yes, you are. But I had such a comforting and wonderful like cocoon in a way. My parents were very much, taught us to be independent. They wanted us to find our own paths. And never said you got to do it this way, you got to do it that way. They let us grow up to be, individuals. My sister's a surgeon in Indianapolis. My brother works for my mother and is an artist. And so, for us, I've never looked at anything but this. I'm not going to tell you I envisioned exactly where I am, but I certainly knew when I was 12 or 14 years old that I was going to be successful. And again, I didn't have a label as to what that meant or if it meant a certain dollar figure or whatever, but certainly for a lot in life, this is where I would have expected to be. I mean, I'm sure, I've told people, there are people that I come across now that knew me when I was 15 years old, and they will remind me of things that I said to them when I was 15. I'm like, I never even remember that, but just very much the same way. Like, I'm going to be super successful one day or whatever. And I don't remember telling them that, but I certainly remember feeling that. I was having a conversation with someone that knew me from when I was 13 years old. Actually, last weekend, he used to go to his barbershop. And he saw me on social media or something, because I don't really have a lot of social media. I'm not on Facebook or anything, but he found my Instagram page and he said, man, I just was looking at you, so I'm so proud. He said, the thing is, I remember that when you would come to the barbershop, you would always have a book. Like, you would always be like reading or working on problems or doing things. And so that was a foundational thing. I mean, again, I think that came from my parents. They didn't knock us over the head of, you have to go to grad school, you've got to do this. But it was, I almost looked at it like the college was the bare minimum in a way. You go and figure out a career or something else. So that kind of leads me to how I ended up at Morehouse. I know you asked us, I gave a long-winded answer as to my family background, because I wanted people to understand, where I come from and how much my familial surroundings impacted where I am today. And that yes, there's a ton of hard work that has led me to here, and that my parents couldn't make me and put me in this seat. There were things that I had to do, but they certainly gave me a wonderful foundation upon which to start. And a lot of people don't have that. So they've got other things that they've got to do. And the reality is, I mean, there's a book called David and Goliath that's written by, I blank on the name, but the point of it is that everything that happens to us in life catapults us to where, whatever decisions or where we're going to go in the future. And that was what was necessary for me. That background was necessary for me. So Morehouse College is one of the most special places that I, could ever think about, I'm sure your father, preached
Yeah.
and would discuss it, but it is a place of, great joy in my heart. It is a proving ground. It is a confidence booster. It is for a 17, 18-year-old, African-American male. We hear about so much, especially in 2020, about, Black men and, things that are happening to Black men in terms of the police and everything else. But, we were so protected there. I mean, it's almost unbelievable to have a 4-year period where you feel smart, you meet other people from different backgrounds and that look like you, but they come from different, they could come from Seattle, or they could come from New York City, or they could come from DC, or they could be from the Bahamas or wherever. And it just gives you such confidence in a very, very important period of your life. And I think that you leave there, I almost call it like the secret sauce. You leave there and you feel like there's really nothing that I can't do, and nowhere that I can, be restricted from, prohibited from. And so, and my mother would, when I was younger, I just remember she never really said it all every day, but I remember her saying, she said, all the great men that I know went to Morehouse. Like she was like, I don't know men that went to Morehouse that aren't great, basically. And so I remembered that. And I almost figured, unless you're, preternaturally gifted in something, whether it be piano, basketball, sport, something, that, if you're an African-American male, like there's no better place for you to go. And, my cousins, who were all the same age, we all were there at the same time. My best friend at the time was going to Morehouse. So it was somewhat of a no-brainer for me. I applied to the usual suspects of schools, but I think that I was always destined to go there. And I think, I look back on it now, it still bears true, right? I mean, I go to everywhere around the world, and if you either meet people that have gone to Morehouse, you talk to people that know about Morehouse. And even still, the folks in my life that are, I can think about the 10 people that I am around sufficiently enough Black men.
Yeah.
7 of them went to Morehouse. They're all, heads of their households, great fathers, great husbands. And so whether I can describe to you and tell you this is the syllabus and how Morehouse does it, I can't. But for some reason, what they do works. And it is obviously year after year has worked. As we know that Dr. King was there, Dr. Mays was there. We know that Sam Jackson, we know that Spike Lee. They continue to, they don't wear the Morehouse colors or the jackets or whatever because it is a place that isn't of import to them. I think that if you ask them the same question, they would give you the same answer. They may not be able to tell you exactly how it's done, but the school, for a variety of reasons, just has a very, very special place in people's hearts that they go there.
Great. Brandon, I do want to point out a few things for those of you listening to this conversation with attorney Brandon Williams. Spelman College, Morehouse College, Clark College, Atlanta University makes up the Atlanta University Center. And I too happen to have gone to Spelman College. Yep. And one of the things Brandon is pointing to, I'm going to say it this way. You hear the term HBCUs. They're historically Black colleges and universities. And I always say this, Brandon, I went into Spelman as a girl. I came out a woman.
Sure.
You came out like a man, but like powerful, courageous, confident. And we were unconstrained by anything from our past.
Yeah.
You come out of the Atlanta University Center. Specifically, Morehouse College is the institution we're speaking about right now. So one thing I want to point out about Brandon, I know his mom, and I've known Brandon quite a long time. And one of the things I remember your mother sharing about you, You know how she says, that one right there? And she said, reading at 3 years old. Brent was reading the newspaper at 3 years old. So it's just no accident that you are where you are, okay?
Sure,
And
absolutely.
I wanted to say that when you spoke about your mom and your family is great. I love them and know them and amazing. I know you were at Alston Byrd
Yes,
and you became partner,
I
I
did.
think at a very rapid level.
Yep.
And then you went into private practice. Share a little bit about what led to that with you.
Sure. I think you mentioned it at the beginning. I went to Emory Law School in Atlanta, Georgia,
Yeah.
and I graduated from there in 2002. I went to work at a law firm called Alston Byrd, where I practiced kind of corporate legal stuff, represent a lot of companies and directors and different things, and had a wonderful run there. I was there for 15 years, from
Wow.
2002 to 2017. And then I was representing a client, Steve Harvey, who most people know from his Family Feud and radio and television fame. I was representing, him on a business front about from 2015 to 2017 or so. And, we got along well, and, it was a good kind of relationship in terms of how we interacted. He called me on a Saturday in October of 2016, I believe. And we're just having a very like generic conversation. He said, after kind of the pleasantries and how you doing, how's your weekend going, blah, blah, blah. He said,
Yeah.
well, how, have you ever thought about working, outside of Alston Byrd? And my answer was sort of like, not really. I enjoyed the firm. I enjoyed the autonomy that I had. I enjoyed having clients. I had built a very, very good practice in terms of, my own clients. I was working on the things that I wanted to work on. So I never really had a desire to leave. And that's very rare for, a young African-American to have that at a firm like that and to be successful in that way, where you're working on your own clients' matters and you bringing in your own level of business and whatnot. So, I just wasn't. And then I said, well, I am working for you. And, I was like, he said, no, I don't think you understand what I'm asking. He's like, no, I'm saying, have you ever thought to like leave where you are and work for me exclusively? And, I said to him, no, not really. And we sort of talked. He said, well, I want you to really consider it. I want to, make it a real consideration. So we agreed we were going to go play golf in Miami at the end of the year. And then at that, during the weekend that we would talk and kind of what would it look like? What would the role look like? I explained to him, I've never wanted to be like a normal in-house counsel. It never appealed to me to go work in-house at Coca-Cola. It just wasn't something I wanted to do.
That wasn't you. Yeah.
So we talked during that weekend, and I had a conversation with my wife about it, and she was all aboard, whatever decision that I ultimately made. And I kind of felt like this. I felt like I didn't think that I would regret leaving the firm. Mm-hmm. I did think that I would regret not accepting the role that we carved out from Steve Harvey. So that was ultimately my decision. I felt like, if I'm not going to regret one, and I will regret the other, then it was kind of that simple for me, quite frankly. I didn't do a ton of, critical thinking about it. I just sort of felt like it was a good time. I had just turned 40 years old. I had been at the firm for 15 years. I had a very good run. And I think I just thought it was something new to do. I mean, I was going to be involved in the business. I was going to be involved in the legal, and it was just sort of time. The challenge for me, quite frankly, was more the everything else. I mean, it was new. I mean, I had been at a very high level corporate law firm. This was almost like me walking into a startup, quite frankly. I mean, like you
Wow.
see, Steve Harvey on television, but to have a business that surrounds
Yeah.
them, you got to do a lot of work. You got to do a lot of building and developing and, getting that, to a point where you're like, okay, this is a real business, not just a Steve Harvey. This is a business surrounded.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
He's an entity in and of himself.
yeah. So that was a big challenge. And then my wife was pregnant and the job, the business had moved to Los Angeles. So, I was commuting to LA from Atlanta, every week. And,
Wow.
to have a pregnant wife, we had just bought a home in Atlanta. We had talked about this, should she move? I felt like, no. I got a place in LA, and then it was just, it was kind of a little bit of a culture shock. Like for me, with all the travel, it was a different environment. Again, I'd been in a very, very corporate environment where everything was at your beck and call, from resources, from people, from everything. And then you're coming to an environment that is a wonderful place to be, but you got to do a lot of it's a lot of jack of all trades, and until you hire people to fit certain roles. But looking back on it now, that was the summer of 2017, and now we're in the fall of 2020. I don't know if it's fall yet, but we're close.
Close.
So we're during the latter part of 2020, and the first year and a half was a lot of work, but I think I proved to myself that it was the right decision. And look, in the beginning, there were moments where I was like, "What have I done? Like I've just
wow,
I've ruined my life or whatever it is." But some of that's probably fear and the unknown, and you're comfortable doing something for so long. Doesn't mean that's the place you should be or where you want to be. And, I ultimately, what it was almost like a mental shift. About 6 months in, I just said to myself, like, there is no like plan B. Like you gotta, you almost mentally had to like leave Atlanta. In terms of, I got, I didn't spend as much time in the city. I didn't spend as much time with friends in Atlanta because I was forcing myself to like, you got to do everything you can to make this be the place. You don't have a place to go back to. Like, this isn't, I always
you reinvented yourself. Yeah. Sounds like you reinvented yourself.
Yeah. I did. I had to. It wasn't a function of will you, could you, it's a must. It took a different me in the role. And I think that, I look back on it now and partly I feel like, there's, I probably have always felt this way, but I think that it crossed something for me to know that like I could feel comfortable pretty much in any scenario. I've worked at the very, very high level corporate, I've worked in a smaller environment where, you're building something. I think I can do them, that runs the full gamut of, opportunities. And so it's been, it was a necessary departure, an environment that I could have stayed at and been, very, very successful for the next 20, 25 years. I think for me, it was necessary to take myself out of a comfort zone because, and I think just has been proven in 2020, if you expect things are going to stay the same, then you're tripping.
Yes.
And life
right.
in no way over our lifetimes is ever going to be simple and the same, and you have the same job and the same career. You're going to have to be fluid. You're going to have to be, malleable in terms of, how you approach life and business and your career. Whereas, previous generation, our parents or even their parents, they worked the same jobs for 35 and 40 years.
Yeah.
Got to go watch. But that just isn't going to be this
Won't
current
be the
generation,
case.
where, people are going to have the same jobs for 45 years. Good luck if you do. I mean, my father has had he's worked at the same job for probably 38 years. But I think that's a rare thing for what our generation is going to do and go through.
Yeah.
And so shaking myself up kind of mid-life, so to speak,
Yeah.
was the right thing to do for me, personally.
Okay, great. Now I'm going to ask you a couple more questions because, as you guys can see, we could talk to Brandon and listen all day long. But he's a very busy man. So I want to say a few things now and ask you a few questions about working with Steve Harvey.
Okay.
Family Feud has got to be the biggest television program in the world. I know that you guys are in Africa where you chart. I mean, that's like totally charting new territory. And that you've become an executive producer with the show. And so, couple things, and you can just do it in your own way.
Yep.
I want you to share a little bit about what it's like working with Steve Harvey and being the executive producer. And I will say, in any given moment, my nephew watches Steve Harvey at least 4 times a day.
Sure.
I watch it at least 3 times a day. I look at it. I mean, you can't help it. It just pulls you in. And for most people, at least for me, I know for you, there's nothing more important in life than family.
Yep.
So the context of it. People right now could use the laughter. People could use the ease of watching something that's not intimidating and all that kind of stuff. So share with us about that. I mean, this is really huge.
Yeah, I think that it's been an amazing sort of transition for me to work alongside Steve Harvey is what you would think. I mean, it's funny.
Mm-hmm.
He's probably one of the most loyal people that I've ever met, in terms of his, the folks that are around him, the people that work for him. He creates an environment that is, I think he allows you to be who you are, but to also, he's not going to tell you what you can or can't do. It's like, if you have aspirations to be a producer or a director or whatever, if you can, because his whole life is about motivation and faith and growth and if you think it, like he will always say, if it's something that comes into your mind, no matter how crazy, how amazing you may think or how far away it may seem, God's put it there for a reason, right? Like your imagination is just God's view about what your life should be, right? Like and some people don't acknowledge that, accept it, or think it's just too far away. Now, what he will also say is it doesn't mean that you're not going to have some bumps, that you're not going to have some bruises. The end of it may be spectacular, but the journey is going to be a journey, right?
Yeah.
And so, I think daily for me, it's cool to work with someone that has that kind of belief. You hear his story, you hear that, a person that believed so much that he was going to be in television from when he was 10 years old, and then people, he stuttered and people said, there's no way, what are you talking about? You just this little black boy from Cleveland. And to see the heights that he's, risen is incredible. But it also, from a vision standpoint, you're like, why couldn't I be this, or why couldn't I be that? And he is supportive of that idea, because that's what his life has been. He's not here to tell you what you can or can't do. And so if you work for an organization where the leaders, that's their mindset, then you don't really have any barriers, right? Like, whatever's available, I can do it. And so people would, ask me, well, what is, how did you become an executive producer? And because I thought that's what I should be. And most specifically, I think in Africa, I mean, I would, it's better for me to tell the story because I think people would appreciate it. But,
Yeah.
in November of I guess it must have been 2018, Sheila, I got a phone call from Steve Harvey, and he said that, look, I want to do television in Africa. And I thought to myself, I mean, I don't even know what are you talking about? Like, what do you mean?
Right.
And that's what I said internally. But as I tend to say to him, no matter what it is, I was like, okay, sure. Like, he didn't really say much more beyond that. He didn't give me any direction. He didn't really tell me anything. And now, this is coming to me. I had never even been to Africa,
Wow.
crazy as that sounds, I hadn't. And so, I began to just sort of, again, when you're listening to something that somebody else has a belief in, then you're like, well, this must have to happen because he wouldn't have been receiving it if it wasn't. Yeah. So, I just went on. I mean, I for the next 4 to 6 months, I was in Africa probably, half the year. And
wow.
I just sort of figured it out. I mean, I flew to the Middle East a couple of times to deal with some people. I kind of got the lay of the land, how you would do it. I was meeting with networks in Africa. I was meeting with brands in Africa to potentially like support the show. So I found out about the television business in Africa. And so from what I did to bring his, vision to fruition, that's an executive producer. I'm not the person that is directing the families and like doing any of that. But like, if not for me taking, as much time and as much, risk and being gone from my family for weeks and months at a time, it wouldn't have happened. Certainly not at the clip or the speed at which it happened. So we ended up shooting episodes in Johannesburg for South Africa. And then we shot, that was at the end of 2019. And then we shot the Ghana version at the top of 2020. And it aired, they both began to air like April 5th and 6th of 2020. And it's been the #1 show in both countries for the first, 20 weeks or whatever it is. But primarily, for the reasons that you stated. I mean, I think it, no matter what your culture is, people believe in family, right? Like they love their parents, they love their children, they love, and then you mix that with his uncanny ability to be funny. You've got sort of a rock solid goal, but to watch it unfold, I remember the first day of shooting, I was just kind of like, this is incredible, right? Like,
oh my goodness,
from a phone call, 6 months or 8 months or 10 months before, to this is actually happening in Johannesburg. It's kind of mind blowing, but I would say that that's another one of those things that, if in life, I would tell people is like the possibilities are endless, right? Like I had a meeting last night with Akon, who is doing a ton of stuff in Africa. And we were talking about this very thing. Like he's building like a city, like Black Panther type city in Senegal.
Get out.
And, when you listen to somebody describe that, you're like, wait, like what?
Oh my goodness.
But I wasn't even, in my mind, I'm like, oh, I get it. Like, because again, mine on a much smaller scale. But I just thought about like, went from never having gone to Africa to I could go to any country there and I would be able to get around and work my way around. And I've spent, considerable time in, multiple countries in Africa. And so if I can do that in 6 months, then, what you can do anything in, 10, 20 years,
Yeah.
if that's what you're destined to do. If you have something in your gut that tells you this is what you should do, I don't care if it's age or money or whatever. If it is a vision that God has given you, and again, if you felt it or heard it or it's in your gut, and
Yeah.
that's what it is. There is no limit to what it is. I don't care about race and all the things that seemingly hold us back, which they do. But if it is something that's in you and you're willing to make the sacrifices, and they're going to be great, you are going to have to sacrifice. But if it is really, really your calling, or what they would call from the alchemist, your legend or your personal legend or whatever it may be, if it's that, then you can achieve it. Absolutely.
Yes. Awesome. Well, first of all, congratulations on all the accomplishments there. And I just so hear you've so built something in your partnership with Steve Harvey from nothing. And without knowing it all or having it figured out, and had it be something that's like extraordinary and a contribution and a gift to the world. So really congratulations for that, Brandon. And I'm going to start to wrap it up. I'm going to ask just a few more questions.
Fire away. It's okay.
All right. This is so awesome. Oh, my goodness. You talked a little bit about 2020.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to talk a little bit about the climate of the country right now.
Sure.
In your experience as a Black man in this time, or as a man, as an attorney, what do you see could make a difference, or just what do you have to say about all this?
Yeah, I think, look, it's been a very, very emotionally taxing 6 months, or how long we've been dealing with this since March. You start with the pandemic, and then you get the George Floyd, you get the Ahmaud Arbery, and you as a Black man, look, I'm always cognizant of being a Black man, and I have been for many years, and it's weird. Like, my parents didn't ever really, they weren't like preachy about being a Black man, or like your job is to get home, or we just grew up in a safer environment. Again, I don't know if it was because everybody around us was African American, and it was upwardly mobile. I don't know what it was, but I didn't feel growing up that it was this like a brand of being a Black man. Like, I felt like it was, that's just life. Everybody around me is Black.
Yeah.
In 2020, I think you're concerned about that a whole lot more. I'm very, very thoughtful about everything. I'm thoughtful about when I leave the house. I'm thoughtful about when if I go run in the neighborhood. I never do it when it's dark.
Wow.
If I'm going to the store, my wife is always, yelling at me because I wear hoodies, and she's like, do not put that hood on.
Oh, wow.
You're not thinking like I'm going to rob them or anything. I'm just, when it's cold, like I got a ball head and I got to cover my head up.
Right.
And so, but 2020's it's just been an enlightening thing, right? Like, this is stuff that has been going on for years and generations and for such a long time. And the toughest part of it all is that, a lot of it is a power struggle. This is, white Americans or white people just period that have historically been, purveyors of exploitation, quite frankly. And I think that the tug now is that people are just like, man, enough is enough, right? Like,
yes.
why can't we live in harmony? We just want to live. And as I have told somebody, recently, like, forget that the point or the organization Black Lives Matter. The point that we want you to understand is that Black Lives matter. Like that's forget an organization, right?
Yes,
like,
I so get it.
it isn't about the organization. All we're asking is to be treated, feel like we're proper citizens here, that we have a role here because we help build the country. We've done everything
Yes.
to make it what it is today, from a
Yep.
culture standpoint, from an impact standpoint. I mean, if you think about everything, I mean, you think about inventions, you think about music, you think about fashion, you think about food. It doesn't matter. Like, we are in every fiber of it. And so why would we not want to be treated properly? Why would we want our children to grow up in the world? So I feel like 2020 is that it's a tug of war of just ideals that have persisted for hundreds and hundreds of years, and other things of people just being like, man, I'm tired. Like, I don't want to see this anymore. And then now it's way more visual. You've got phones and cameras, and so the same things happened 50 years ago or 75.
Yes.
Just we didn't see it. We didn't get to see the image. But when the thing that helped, change a ton was, when Emmett Till's mother said, no, leave the casket open, right? I don't like you all won't be able to understand how bad this was if I don't leave it open. Yes, it's going to be very painful to see my son, who's 14 years old, lay there and is like as damaged and as ravaged as he is. But this is for the world to see. And that's where we are. It's like,
Yes.
sadly, you've got to see video of people hunting and killing Black people, or Black men for that matter. And unfortunately, it's got to be a very, very visual and visceral thing for people to like pay attention to it. But I say all of that, and I'll conclude the comment with this: despite it all, right? Like, I think,
Yes.
despite it all and everything that is happening, I would say to African Americans and folks that are listening and that live in the United States. When I was in Ghana, there's you go to a place called Elmina, which is where the door of no return is, and to have the experience of stepping out that door to see what 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 generations before you went through. Because again, if you're in the United States, somebody in your bloodline made it, right? Like, there were millions of us that died on the passage. There were millions of bloodlines that never made it here, and some of it could have been personally because they took their own, because they just didn't want to do it. But no matter what, the strength of us as a people, as a community, is that we've figured out a way to make it, right? Like, think about that. We didn't have a language. We were ripped apart from families. We didn't have anything. We didn't have customs. We didn't have the ability to know even where we were. Like, if you just imagine, if you were happening today, you were Sheila James and you got a media company, and then someone just yanked you out of your house, took you to Greenland. And they speak a different language. They, you can't talk it, you can't think it. Think about what the importance of you being in this moment. And if you think about that and the sacrifices and the things that have been done before you, you start to realize, like, man, we this is all for a reason. We can make it. We can bounce back from anything. We can survive anything if we've made it from there, halfway across the world.
That's right.
There were no planes. There were no, like, this was the worst of the worst travel, and we made it to the Bahamas, and we made it to the Caribbean. We made it to Mexico. We made it to the South. We made it everywhere. And then now we're right on par, right? And that's with 400 years of like just being subjected to the worst conditions ever. We'll find a way to make it. So mine is always to leave with power, right? Like, that yes, it's rough. Yes, it's tough. Yes, it's all the things that everyone is experiencing, but notwithstanding any of that, the fact remains is that we are just an unbelievably anointed people because if you think about what we've been through, no other group has been through that. And not
That's
only
right.
did we go through it, we've found a way to carve out parts of life that, we were unthinkable 30 years ago or 50 years ago, or hell, for 20 years ago for some people. So that's what I'm left with, is just that, yes, 2020 is, awful, but 2020 isn't what 1619 was. I mean, not even close for Black people.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
And you could actually say too, as awful as it's been, it's become a big opportunity for us and for the world, because the world got the communication this time. It got bigger than us.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So Brandon, in closing, we got to mention your beautiful wife and your adorable daughter. What do you want to say about them?
They are sort of everything to me. I mean, I've been, Mashawn and Emery are the lights of my life, and they provide me as much joy as anything in life. I mean, there's nothing better than when I come home and Emery runs to the steps and says, "Oh, daddy's home." And so it's been an unbelievable, experience for us to, now I've got my own family and I'm raising my own child. And to see her blossom and grow. And again, if I look at what my foundation was and then think of where I am or can go, or the heights that I can go, and I just think about her, quite frankly, is because she will be in a generation ahead of that, right? Like I had mine, and then she will be starting, if I started here, she's starting here. And the things that she'll experience and see that she'll be able to take to, God willing, to the next, her own generation and the generation after her and all that. I mean, it's mind blowing to think about it, but it makes me happy. It makes my heart, smile that we are raising a beautiful Black little girl, and that she hopefully, again, God willing, turn to a beautiful Black woman, and that she'll have beautiful Black children. And that is a point in life that I hope that she reaches. And, we want the best for her. And Mashawn and I are, we've got a great relationship, a great friendship, and she supports me in what I do, and I support her in what she does. And, we've figured out a way to make our, strange life work, that, that, daddy's gone a lot and travels a lot, but we make time for each other. I make time for them. And it is the thing that allows me to kind of keep going, is to know that them at home and them believing and supporting me in what I'm doing.
Great, Brandon. Well, last thing, and then we're going to wrap it up for today, is, and you just spoke a little bit about it, I'm sure, but what is it you love about your life right now and where you are?
I mean, I think I love that it's genuine. I mean, it's genuinely me. I think that's always something that I've, carried with me pretty well, no matter what environment I was in. I've always just sort of been Brandon, and people would, say that, I've kind of seamlessly been able to maneuver different, environments and always remain true to who I am. But I feel like I'm as authentic now as probably I've ever been, just in terms of what I do and, how I do it. And then I think that there's the other part that I am happy about my life is that it's balanced. I've got my personal life is in order and solid with my family, and then the professional life is going in a great direction. And I think that there's the possibilities of what either of those are, in my mind, are endless. And so to have a life of dreams, quite frankly, that you could, not just dreams that are these like crazy, whatever, but no, things that you can actually achieve in your lifetime. That is exciting about life, that you wake up every day and, that you can actually change something again in your sphere or whatever. I'm not, whatever.
Yes, no, we get it.
That part's exciting.
Good. Well, for everyone who listened today, Attorney Brandon Williams, you made my heart smile and our listeners' heart smile. Thank you so much for your conversation, your gift, what you're contributing to the world, to Steve Harvey, who's contributing to so many. And for everyone listening, thank you for listening, and God bless you, and we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.